If you're an SEC fan, here's the uncomfortable truth. The Big Ten just won a third straight national title, and the scariest part is this. The SEC's biggest advantages are gone. But there is one change the SEC can make right now that gives them a real path back to the top, and it's not just spend more money. Welcome into OFB College Football. If you want to be the smartest college football fan in your group chat, subscribe to the channel right now. In this video, I'm going to explain what actually changed in college football over the last 3 years, why the SEC is reacting in the worst possible way to all of these changes, and the one fix that stops the Big Ten from continuing to lap them over the next decade. And yes, it does involve our favorite, Paul Finebaum, as well as Nick Saban. So Indiana just held off Miami 27-21 to win the national championship. And got to admit, that sentence still sounds fake, right? Indiana, 2 years after being 3-9, goes 16-0 and wins the national championship. Here's the part that should be really eye-opening to everybody. Indiana won as many bowl games in the last month as it had in the entire 120-plus years it played college football before the last month. And it did it without a roster full of five stars. This might be the most concerning thing to SEC country or any of the big powers out there. Only 7 players, okay? Only 7 players on this entire Indiana roster were 4-star or better out of high school. That is a monumental thing for college football to have a national champion like that. Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner, gave us one of the most legendary and iconic college football plays you'll ever see with his touchdown run on fourth down. It's like a where were you when, remember that sort of moment type of play. Now, here, though, is where this all gets bigger than Indiana because, well, everyone is distracted by this Cinderella story, how great this is. And I say everyone, not everyone. The internet is not totally distracted by this because there's a lot of discord about this. But the story is the Big Ten has won 3 straight national championships, and the SEC has not even played for a national championship in 3 straight seasons. The SEC cannot say that it's been in a national championship game more recently than the Big 12. So what happened? How did the SEC go from having the sport by the throat to what is happening right now? There are 2 big changes that caused this. And there's a reason the SEC might not recover until they fix one of the big issues here. Here is one of the big problems, though, for the SEC. NIL went crazy. It's not uncapped yet. We may be headed to that, but the real shift is that you could pay players a bunch of money. And for years, the SEC was able to hoard a bunch of talent because the transfer portal did not exist. They could stockpile a 2 or 3 deep of incredible talent because they had access to the best talent. Proximity mattered a lot more before the transfer portal and before NIL. Proximity to talent and the recruiting pipeline combined with the tradition of those schools in the SEC when money wasn't a part of the picture, at least above the table, that led to the SEC hoarding a ton of talent. Change 2, just the transfer portal in general. If a guy is on Georgia's 2 deep and he's not playing, he can go transfer somewhere else to a major Power 4 school and play a lot and get paid really well. So no longer could you build these super teams like the last SEC national champion, Georgia, in 2022. That used to be a cheat code of sorts for the SEC. Proximity to the best local high school talent when that was basically the only way to get it. Keep it on your roster, hoard it. Don't have to worry about it going other places. Well, the sport has changed a lot with the way that the model has changed. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating that this has changed a bunch and the proliferation of talent being more spread out is not a real thing, here's a legit NFL draft data point that you can't ignore. In the latest mock draft from Dane Brugler of The Athletic, the SEC has 0 top 10 picks. 0 in the latest NFL mock draft. They only have 3 of the top 20. That is also staggering. That's about as staggering as Indiana winning a national championship with only 7 4-star or better players. I'm not saying the SEC is a bad league. Top to bottom, it is still the deepest in the country, no doubt. But at the top, where titles are decided with the high-end talent, the Big Ten has just been better. And the SEC has been struggling to deal with that reality. They're pouting instead of adapting. And that is the big thing the SEC really has to fix. This is the crux of the issue, okay? It's not anything about money. It's not a TV contract. It's not a commissioner. It's the attitude that the SEC has right now, emblematic of two of the biggest voices, not only in the SEC, but in college football. Let's talk Nick Saban and Paul Finebaum, both guys at ESPN, and both reveal the exact mindset problem that the SEC has right now. Okay, we'll start with Paul Finebaum, everybody's favorite, right? This is how Paul Finebaum described within the last week Indiana's national championship run. Quote, "It will be a cute story, but it really won't get that much." He's talking about attention. It's all about what's next in the NFC, AFC championship games. He was asked, how big of a deal will Indiana's national championship be if they win it? He called it a cute story, but it won't really get that much attention. That is totally incorrect. This is the best story we've had in college football in a very long time. It is so refreshing to not have one of the same 5 schools winning a national championship. It's the first time since 1996 that a team has won its first national title. Respect to UCF, though. Calling it cute is just downright arrogant. And I'm not even saying that from a standpoint of like it annoys me as someone that's not in SEC country. It's arrogant to the point that it's going to hurt your league. Okay? That's not real analysis. That's an unhealthy coping mechanism, my friends. That is Blockbuster refusing to acknowledge that Netflix is doing something right. Okay? And it's not just a one-off thing. Back in October, Paul Finebaum was asked on ESPN about Curt Cignetti's $93 million contract extension, and he said they did not do the right thing. I'm still not convinced that Curt Cignetti is one of the top coaches in America. This attitude that the SEC has it all figured out and everybody else doesn't, it's got to change, or this league is going to continue to get lapped by the Big Ten. And it's not just Paul Finebaum. This is not just one media guy talking. Let's go to the greatest SEC head football coach of all time, Nick Saban. Nick Saban, talking yesterday before the national championship game, not only picked Miami, Curt Cignetti, a guy who worked for him. I don't know if Cignetti just didn't kiss the rings hard enough, but picked Miami and said this, quote, "The money is an advantage for the Big Ten. You'll never convince me otherwise. People in the South would not go to the North unless you paid them." I mean, it just feels like such sour grapes. This is fat and happy people that were used to the old system and the way they had it worked really well, and they don't want to adapt. Again, I will bring up Blockbuster. The general attitude of the SEC right now seems to be like, well, look, the only reason that anybody would ever want DVDs delivered straight to their doorstep is because they're lazy. These people are lazy, and they just write it off. Well, Netflix takes off and becomes the new thing. The SEC needs to change this, man. They need you can fill up the comments all you want and call me an SEC hater. That's fine. But if you continue to just do that as opposed to actually roll up your sleeves, get down to work, and adapt instead of whine, the SEC is going to continue to be in this position, man, because the Big Ten has this thing totally figured out right now. You got to stop treating this new system like it's some kind of an insult and actually treat it like, hey, we've got to just react and do what we need to do to win. So what does that actually mean? Is the SEC actually cooked? No, the SEC is not actually cooked. Like, the SEC can be perfectly fine. They are more than capable of making changes. I think a lot of things need to change. Josh Pate, one of the most popular voices in a college sports space who is from SEC country, has done a good job, I think, of hitting on some of this. He has talked about SEC got lazy with staffing because they could just overwhelm you with talent. All of these types of things need to change. And it has to start with that as opposed to an attitude of holier than thou, we're still better than you. This is just cute that you guys are doing this now. It's been 3 years, guys. It's been 3 years. That TCU Georgia game was a long time ago. That was a lifetime ago with all the change that has happened in college sports. Big Ten right now, better organized, whether it's financially or even just evaluating talent. Because, again, Curt Cignetti did not have the most expensive, most talented roster. So the SEC has way too many great coaches, great programs, rich alums who care deeply, way too many of these things for it to be totally over for the SEC. It's obviously not. And I feel like that's some of the pushback you get from SEC fans if you ever say anything like this. But the era of just like automatically dominating because you have the SEC patch on the jersey and because that's the way it's been for 20 years, that's long gone. That's over. So it's time for the SEC to stop calling all this cute and acknowledge that it's been getting its ass kicked. And the SEC needs to turn that around if it's going to get back to the top of the sport. So let me ask you, do you think the SEC is actually in trouble in the long term, or are we just overreacting to what the Big Ten is doing right now? Let me know in the comments. Let me have it in the comments if you disagree. I would love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to be the smartest college football fan in your group chat, and I will talk to you all very soon.